Hi there, I'm coming in a bit early just to make sure all is going well. I hope you're well this week. Okay, we'll just wait a few moments. Hope you're well. And if I can see you coming in, I will say hello to you. If I can't see you, don't be upset with me. It's just that when we're doing this, I can't always see. I might be able to see on my phone. Anyway, I hope you're well. It's very hot here and steamy in Florida at the moment. I don't know what the weather is like where you are. Hopefully it's fine. I can't see things at the moment. Okay. What are we? 6:59. Okay. All good. Hi there. Oh, I can hear myself, which is not what I wanted to do. Oh, hi. Yes, Dawn. Hi. I can see you. I'm trying to see if I can see you on my phone as you come in. Hi, Dawn. Hi, Jill. Georgette. Hi from Rhode Island. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining. It's great. What are we now? Okay. This is so nice. I like this when we come in early and I can see you all coming in because it's a bit difficult for me to see as I go along the names. And if I refresh the page, I have the laptop to my left so I can see what's going on. But if I keep refreshing the page, it delays it again. So it's lovely to see you all. Thank you so much for joining. That's great. So we're nearly at 7 now. Yes, I wanted to come in early because last week it didn't work so well. So anyway, 7 o'clock now. So welcome indeed to Knitter Matters. This is season 2, episode 13. And whether you're a regular viewer or you're watching for the first time, a huge welcome to you. And thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I'm very grateful to you. I'm Cheryl Lampard. I'm an image consultant. My company is Style Matters International. And throughout my life, I've had the passions of sewing and knitting. And knitting in particular is one of my... I do it every day. It's my de-stressor. I do it when I'm binge watching Netflix or something. It's just my therapy. And I know a lot of you feel the same way about knitting. I also used to be the owner of a yarn store in Brighton, England called Yomo, which is Japanese for hair of the sheep. And one of the joys of having a store, apart from being surrounded by all that gorgeous yarn, is that you get to teach people how to knit. So it's a great joy to be doing that all these years later, albeit via a different platform. Now, before I start, I just want to address some comments that I've had about the ring light effect reflecting off my glasses. Now, I am completely aware of this, and I wish it wasn't the case, but if I turn the light right down, it's way too dark, as I think you might see. Oh, that's the wrong way. It gets really too dark. And if I take my glasses off, then I'll be squinting because I'm really quite nearsighted. But I'm going to try various things to make this better as we go along. And really, so it doesn't look so odd. I am aware it looks a bit odd. But the important thing is that you see what I'm doing when we go to the worktop. That's the really important thing. And as long as you can see my hands properly when I demo, I'm not so worried. But rest assured, as the weeks go on, I'm going to try and fix this, and hopefully next week we might have another solution. But anyway, I'm going to move the camera now to the worktop. So bear with me on this because it's a bit fiddly to get it in the right place so that you can see what I'm seeing. And this is the time to look away if it makes you a bit squeamish. Okay, so I did say, oh, there's a few more people coming in. Susan, hi Susan. Barbara, oh, this is so nice. Helen, that's great. Right, let me try and just get this into a place. You need to be able to see what I'm doing with my hands, and I need to be able to see what you're seeing on the laptop, just so I can check we're in the right place. And I think we're almost there. Okay, that seems to be okay. So okay, well, yeah, that seems to be good. All right, then, let's start. So today's topic is clever cast-ons. We covered several different cast-ons in season 2, episode 4. And those techniques are pretty much what knitters use all the time. My go-to is a long tail cast on. I really like that. And we all tend to sort of favour certain cast ons. I think this was a long tail cast on. Okay. But there are times when other techniques are needed. For example, backward loop cast on, which we'll be actually doing today, various things. Backward loop cast on, it's not something I would start a garment off with particularly, because it's not that, you don't get much strength with it. It's not stretchy, but it's really good when you want to cast on additional stitches in the middle of the knitting, like here in this honeybee stitch, which showed a while ago when we did that honeybee pattern. But this, you start off, you start off by these sort of yarn overs and drop the stitches, but then you need to cast on the stitches that you've reduced to either side, and the best way to do that is with a backward loop cast on. It's really nice and flat, and it works really well in the middle of knitting. So that has certainly a place in our knitting. But another time when a different cast on is useful is when you want a good stretchy ribbed edge. And in itself, ribbing gives the knitting stretch. You know, that's why we use it for where elasticity is needed. Elasticity, I'll try and say that again. Elasticity is needed, or to narrow an area down without reducing the size. So on cuffs or anywhere where you need to sort of pinch it in. But sometimes a cast on method isn't as stretchy as the ribbing. This one actually is, because I made sure that it was. But I don't know if you've ever tried to put a sweater over your head, or even a child's head, in particular a child's head, because the younger the child, the bigger the head is in proportion to their body, that the body sort of grows around the head. That sounds weird, but you know, a baby's head is bigger than the rest of its body compared to the adult proportions, or even a child's proportion and a teenager's proportion. So if you've ever tried to knit a little sweater for a child, you very often find that there's buttons along the shoulder, or it's got to have some other way of getting it over the head, because it's just not going to stretch enough and then spring back for the size of the neck or the body. So this, let's presume this is a firmer edge than we want. If you've ever tried stretching something over something that doesn't want to go, you know, you run the risk of actually it distorts the garment, and you could even sort of tear the ribbing. Certain yarns, I can remember in Yomo, we did a chenille sweater, and it was a really nice effect. But the ribbing, oh, I should have done the ribbing quite differently, because it didn't take many try-ons for that ribbing to just snap on the cast on edge, because the chenille had no stretch at all. And I should have done that differently, but we learn. Anyway, if we look at machine knits, they don't have that type of edge. This is I just stole my husband's sweater here. This is a machine knit sweater, but you can see there's a really nice kind of rolled edge here on the cast on. Okay, it's kind of, obviously this is quite an old sweater and it's flat over time, but you can see how this cast on appears to sort of roll over the edge, and it's it's virtually the same both sides. I don't know if you can see that, but if you're wearing a machine knit sweater, or you have one in the cupboard, you have a look next time. It's not the same as a hand knit cast on, and this is one of the times when actually, I hate to say it, but I prefer almost a machine knit cast on edge to sometimes a standard cast on. But we can actually get a similar effect with something called a tubular cast on, or an invisible cast on. So I've done 3 here, and you'll see this lovely kind of it is a tubular edge, but these techniques, I've done 2 tubular cast ons on an invisible. This is a tubular, this is a tubular, and this is an invisible. They're all very similar, and I'm going to show you how to do all 3. And it's called a tubular cast on because actually you do get, for those first few rows, you're creating a tube. You are creating a tube of sorts. But can you see how lovely and stretchy that is? And it is the same the other side. It appears to sort of roll over the edge. It's almost as if the ribbing comes from nowhere. There's no real sort of start to it, and I really like that. Plus, it's a super edge for hats, gloves, cuffs, certainly some hemlines or sweaters, certainly. And, you know, on a cuff edge, it's really nice. You haven't got that stiff, hard line. I think it's beautiful. And I like to do this wherever I can. You can use it on top-down sweaters where you're doing a neckline, anywhere where you want a really stretchy edge. Plus, it looks really good. So I said that a tubular cast-on is called that because it creates a tube, and it does. And if you remember, we've done double knitting techniques before, and in season 1 episode 35 on button bands, I did a double knitting technique for this particular button band. And the double knitting, for people in the UK, I know double knitting is a type of yarn weight, so don't confuse that with the actual yarn. Double knitting technique is where you create a sort of two-faced fabric, and you're actually creating a tube. And if I pull this out, you can see that's actually knitted up as a tube. So we're going to do a similar technique, but with ribbing. So I'm going to show you 2 ways to do a tubular cast on and then an invisible cast on. Now, there are a few more steps in doing these cast ons, but they're really worth the extra effort. As with so many knitting techniques, there's more than one way to do tubular cast ons. And I'm going to show you 2 of my favorites and then the invisible cast on, and then you can decide which you prefer. Okay. So the first sample, I'm going to do this one. I'm going to be doing this one. So the first sample that I'm going to do, what I've done here, I've just started it off because you don't really need to see me doing the first bit. All of these techniques, you'll need a bit of scrap yarn. And I would suggest that you use the yarn, for your scrap yarn, I would use, oh, I'm off the screen, I'm sorry. For all of these techniques, you're going to need some scrap yarn. And as I say, I would suggest that you use the same weight of yarn as the garment that you're going to be using. I certainly wouldn't go thicker. You could go a bit thinner if you want, but where possible, use a similar weight. Otherwise, you could find out you have problems. And I wouldn't go thicker unless your pattern says otherwise. But don't forget, you can substitute these ribbing techniques for virtually any pattern, so it might not tell you. Anyway, so what I've done here, I have knitted a few rows in stocking stitch. You can actually do this straight away after the cast on. I cast on 8 stitches using a backward loop cast on. You can go straight then into change into another color, but I just prefer to have a bit more here so I can really see what I'm doing. So what I did, I cast on 8 stitches. And you don't want to use, you can use a different cast on, but you don't want anything too firm or too knotty, because we're going to take that out in a minute. So anything too knotty, as it were, is going to take you a lot longer to pull out. You're not using it for any other purpose than as a foundation, really, for your tubular knitting. So I've worked a few rows in stocking stitch, and I've ended with a knit row, because now, and I did my stocking stitch, then I changed to my main colour. I should have said that. And then I did a few rows there. I think I did a row of 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I've done 4 rows and I've ended on a purl row. Okay. So, or did I do 3 rows? Yeah, I've done 4. So I'm going to purl my first stitch. I'm going to make sure you can see this. I'm sorry. I've done it again. I moved off the screen. So I'll just say that again. Oops. Golly. I'm using these double pointed needles just because I've got quite a few of them and they're just a bit easier for you to see. But you can use any type of knitting needle. We're knitting on the flat here. So a few rows of stocking stitch. Then I went to my main colour and I did 3, 4 rows of that, ending with a purl. I started off with a purl knit. No, knit, purl. Okay, I need to, yes, that's right. I started with a purl and knit and I need to end with a knit row so the purl is facing me. Glad we've got that sorted. So now I'm going to do a purl stitch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the tip of my left needle into this first loop here of the main colour. Okay, I'll be doing this all along here, so don't worry if you miss it first. Then I'm going to knit that through the back loop. Okay, the first stitch or two is a bit tricky because you've got all these loose ends hanging. I'll bring my yarn forward. I'm going to purl. Then I'm going to take the yarn back and I'm going to go into the next loop. This is where the colour transition took place from the scrap yarn to the main colour. So I'm going to pick that up with my left needle. Because it's mounted on this needle with the legs in the wrong way, I'm going to knit into the back of it. I do know some people prefer to pick up with the right needle. You can do that if you want, as long as you can certainly do that. I prefer to do it with the left needle. So I've just done that one. I need to do another purl stitch. I'm going to pick that up with the tip of my left needle, yarn at the back again, knit through, place it on my left needle. Whoops, I split the yarn there. Knit through the back. Purl stitch, yarn at the back. That's the loose end of my scrap yarn. Pick up my loop there, knit through the back, purl stitch, and that's what we do all the way along. Okay. Oh, the answer phone's just gone off in the other room. Okay, pick up the loop. I split that yarn, but that's okay. I'll go through the back of the loop. Purl, pick up that last loop there, try not to split the stitch. I'm going to knit into the back loop. I'm going to purl this last stitch, but now I need to pick up this kind of half loop that's right at the edge. Oh, I've gone off the top again, I'm so sorry. But what you saw was me doing, I hope you could see that. What you saw was me doing those loops. Now, this is the bit that I've got this sort of half loop here. I need to get that up onto my needle and knit in through the back of that loop. Okay. So what I did, remember, I purled, then I picked up that loop, purl, picked up the loop, and knitted into the back of it, purl, pick up the loop, and knit into the back of it. And then when I got to that, right at that edge, that little funny half loop, I picked that up, did the same thing. Okay, now we can continue with knit one, purl one. I'm going to actually start with a purl here, knit, purl, knit, purl. So your sort of tubular bit is right at the bottom there. That is effectively a tube because we've picked up fabric and created a tube. You could actually probably run a drawstring through there if you really wanted to. It's quite narrow, but you could. So then you would just do your ribbing, knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, for as many rows as you want. And at some point you can then take off the scrap yarn. And what I would do here, and you have to be really careful here because you don't want to cut your knitting. Okay, so I'm going to be very careful about cutting that. Cut it away, pull it away. Just be really careful that you're not going to cut the knitting, and that's another reason you need to do it in a contrast. Yarn, cut away your scrap. As I say, you can do this method straight after your cast on if you like. I prefer just to have a bit to play with. So you can see there how that forms on this form of tubular knitting. Already we've got that nice sort of stretchy rolled hem edge, exactly as we have here. Okay, so that's the first way to do it. I do like this method a lot. That's the first one that we're going to do. The next one is this sample. Again, very similar, just a different technique, just slightly different. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Again, it's with a contrast yarn. We want to cast on a certain number of stitches. So I'm going to cast on 8 stitches, and I'll come back to the amount of stitches in a minute. So I'm going to use a backward loop cast on here, remembering to cast on from the ball of yarn rather than the tail, which I did when I was doing my samples. Not very smart of me, but we've all done it. So backward loop is just this one. So I'm going to actually cast on here, or I'll cast on 8 stitches. I'm going to get an odd number. I know this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, now I can actually cut that yarn. I only need that for my cast on there. What I'm going to do now with my main colour yarn, and again you need more fingers for this. This one, this technique is a little bit more, I don't think it's fiddly, but the first row it is. So I'm just checking that you can see my hands. Okay, yes you can. So with my main colour of the yarn at the back, I'm going to knit one, and I'm going to bring the yarn forward, and I'm going to knit again into the next stitch. I'm actually doing a series of yarn overs. Okay. Now, in that first sample that I showed you, the pink one, we got an even number of stitches because I cast on an even number, and then I doubled the fabric, if you recall, because I picked up those stitches from the base. And because I already had 8 stitches, I'm picking up 8 stitches. Now, when we're doing this method, we're going to get an odd number because you can't have a yarn over right at the end. It's just going to go nowhere. But you can add on or decrease a stitch further up. It's not going to make any difference really to your ribbing, 1 stitch here or there. That if you need it for your pattern after you've done the ribbon, then you can either decrease it or increase it. So all I've done here is I've knitted into each of these stitches, and it's a series, and then it's a yarn over in between them. So I'm doubling virtually the amount of stitches. So I can't obviously put in a yarn over at the end. It's going to go nowhere. So I've got to finish with a knit stitch. Now, this second row feels a bit odd because instinctively there's a pearl loop there that you think, oh, that's a pearl, then I'm going to knit this. We're not doing that on this row. We're going to do the opposite, and this is where it feels odd, but stay with me because it does work. So I'm going to knit one. I'm going to bring my yarn forward. I'm going to slip the purl stitch. I'm not going to knit it. Yarn to the back, knit one. Yarn forward, slip that yarn over. Yarn to the back, knit one. I'm not purling the stitch. I'm slipping it purlwise. Yarn back again, then knit one. Yarn forward. I'm slipping that yarn over purlwise. Yarn at the back, knit the next stitch. Yarn over, I'm slipping that, which would, in the next row, it would be a purl stitch. Well, it would be a knit because I'm going the other way. But you see what I'm saying? That's a knit. You're slipping the yarn overs essentially on this one, okay? And you're knitting what looks like a purl stitch. So it's a bit confusing, that row, but you need to do it this way, and you're going to end with a knit stitch. Okay, now with this one we can actually, we're going to slip that first stitch is a purl, we're going to slip it, we're going to knit, we're going to bring the yarn forward, you're going to slip that purl stitch, yarn at the back, knit. We're going to go along this row. This is how we do the double knitting. This is how we did the double knitting, I should say. This creates the tubular edge. So knit the knits, I'm slipping the purls purlwise, taking the yarn at the back, knitting, slipping purlwise, knitting, and then I'm going to slip that. And then I would repeat those, I would work those rows 2 more times. So I would do a knit, slip the purl, knit, and carry on. Now, to save you watching me doing all that, I've actually done a bit more here. And what I've done is, after I've done essentially 4 passes or 4 rows of those special rows, if you will, well, I'm not purling the purls, I'm slipping them, you can just go back to ordinary ribbing. So I just went back, after I'd done my rows here, I just went back to ordinary ribbing, and then you carry on, knit 1, purl 1, whatever. And then you can take out your scrap yarn, okay? Cut it or pull it, be very careful if you're cutting it, okay? You really don't want to be, I would cut a bit as you go along, because if you start pulling it, see what I mean about, even with just that backward loop, it's sort of fairly firmly embedded. So if you did a really tight or cable cast on or something much firmer, it'd take you forever to unpick it all. So let's just speed this up. Be really, really careful about cutting that out. But I want to show you the edge. I love these tubular cast-ons. Okay, now if you're going to say to me, can you do it with knit 2, purl 2 rib? Why, yes, you can. But that is actually a slightly more complicated process. So we'll do that another day. This is quite enough, I think, for one day. There is a way to do it with knit 2, purl 2 ribbing, but it's a more complex thing. So you have your tubular knit again. It's such a cool technique. I love it. I love it. So finally, so that's 2 ways of doing the tubular cast on. And finally, there is something called an invisible cast on. It's very similar. It's very similar in looks. You're just not creating much of a tube. This one thing I would say while we're just talking about this is do a test piece when you're doing with your yarn. I wouldn't use the tubular cast-ons with a really thick, bulky yarn, because it would tend to flare. It would tend to kind of ruffle, which isn't what you want. So do a test piece, okay? So now I'm going to show you how to do this one. And again, I have, yes, okay. So for this one, I've got so many needles here. For this one, you need 2 pairs of needles. You need a pair of needles that are going to be the size that are compatible with the yarn. Let's turn that light down just a tad there, so it's not reflecting off my hand so much. So you want a the needle size that's compatible with the yarn that you're going to use, and then a pair 2 sizes smaller. Okay, so I think here I am using, this is a 4.5, so it's US 4.5 millimeters, so it's a US 7, and then I've gone down to, I've gone down 3 sizes on this one, only because I actually like the result a bit more. So I've gone down to a US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter. But again, try this out. I tried this one at different needle sizes several times yesterday, and I found that actually I needed to go down a bit more than 2 sizes. I actually went down 3, but it's not huge in this sense because I like the edge a bit better when I've done it. Okay, so what I've done, again, scrap yarn, it's just a different colour scrap yarn. I cast on half the number of stitches again. I worked knit 1, purl 1 rib for 3 or more rows. This is actually knit 1, purl 1 rib. Yes, it is. I can't see there for the minute. So now I'm going to go to my smaller needles. Let me pick up my blue yarn so I'm sort of consistent with what I'm doing. I'm going to change to my smaller needles now. And you often do smaller needles when you're doing the ribbing anyway, so it's no biggie. So I cast on 8 stitches again, half the number that I need. Now what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to, with my smaller needles, I'm going to knit 1, purl 1 in every stitch. This is with my main colour yarn. I just need to put, I didn't want to knot these because it makes it cutting them off harder. So the downside of that is you've got a lot of loose ends there to hang on to. So knit, purl into each of those stitches. Knit, purl into each of those stitches. Knit, purl into each of those stitches. Knit, purl, knit. You're not taking the stitch off the needle, you're leaving it there, but you're knitting and purling. We've done this before, so knit, purl into each. So you're basically doubling the cast off number of stitches. Okay. Change to my other smaller needle. And all I'm going to do now is knit my knits, slip the purl as we've already done with the yarn in front, slip it, yarn at the back, knit, bring yarn forward, slip, yarn to the back, knit, slip the purl off, yarn to the back, just as we've done in all these others. That's a common feature of doing a tubular cast on, because you're basically working on one row at a time. So although you might look like I've done 2 rows, I've actually only worked one, as it were. That's the sort of concept of the double knitting. Okay, slip that last purl one, and we would do this exactly the same thing. So I'm going to knit that, whoops, bring that purl forward, slip that, and so on and so on. Here's one I did earlier. My British friends will know that that comes from a wonderful series called Blue Peter. Let me just swap over so you can see what I've done. So I carry on doing that for 4 rows. Then I revert to my usual ribbing, my knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. Okay, exactly the same as we did before. We haven't really created a tube at the bottom here, but we're going to cut our knitting, cut that scrap yarn off again, which is oddly satisfying. Again, don't get too blasé about it. Be very careful. You really don't want to be cutting into that lovely bit of ribbon that you've just done. So sort of just use nice sharp scissors and sort of pull it away as you go. And if you're not comfortable cutting, then work it along with a nice pointy needle. But I just want to show you again how nice that edge looks. And that's an invisible cast on. It's very similar to the tubular ones. You've got the same nice sort of roll feature. You just haven't got any sort of tube at that edge. Okay, so those were our tubular cast-ons and our invisible. If you're going to ask me which one I like best, I actually think I like the first one that we did most of all, where we do the scrap yarn, then you kind of pick up the loops. I really like that one. But, you know, I like them all. You do what you're comfortable with. Try them all out. I would recommend that before you cast on entirely for a garment, that you do do a swatch. I know a lot of you don't like swatching, but trust me, swatching are your best friends, and the more you do them, the more you'll begin to love them. I know we always want to get to the knitting. I do understand that. Anyway, all of these produce these really nice rolled edges. As I say, be careful with bulky yarns because the edges may flare, and you do need to swatch test first, and certainly before you do a huge number of stitches. And also just try them all, choose the one you like, and do swatches, because apart from anything else, it helps you get the hang of them. If you cast on 150 stitches for a garment, and then you find that your tubular knitting is not great, or your tubular cast on hasn't worked very well, that you won't be very pleased. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that's made the concept of tubular ribs and invisible ribs a bit easier, or a bit more user-friendly. I'm going to just move the camera back. And don't forget, if there's a subject that you'd like me to cover, let me know. I'm not going to know. I try and think of things each week, and sometimes that's brought about by questions, and I love your questions and I love your comments. This is the tricky bit, just trying to get back. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Do try the tubular cast-ons. I think they're fantastic, and I hope you will too. Please let me know if you've got any comments. If there's a subject you'd like me, a topic you'd like me to cover, please let me know. I really want to help you with your knitting, and it's a joy when you do ask me questions. I love it. And I will always get back to you, whether it's the same within the hour or within the day. I promise to get back. Oh, on that subject, because I do share this with a number of knitting forums, if you ask me a question on one of the other forums and I don't see it, if I don't respond in sort of 24 hours or so, do just message me, either at the Knit Matters page or Cheryl Lampard page, because sometimes I have to dig deep to find the thread in those forums, and if I don't answer, please feel free to message me. I don't want you to think I wouldn't respond, because that's not how I work. I like to respond. So, as always, this episode, which is Season 2, Episode 13, will be uploaded to this page, the Knit Matters page, within 24 hours. And it will also go onto our YouTube channel of the same name. So do subscribe to that if you'd like to. And it will also be on Style Matters International website. If you're searching for this later, did I say? It's Season 2, Episode 13. I can't remember what I said then. So thank you again for watching. I hope you found that enjoyable and something else to try. And I hope you're eager to try those techniques. So join me again next week. And in the meantime, stay well, stay calm, and stay knitting. Take care for now. Take care for now. Take care. Bye for now. Bye-bye.